On paper, product research and delivery orbit the same mission. Research discovers what users truly need, product turns that into a coherent strategy, and delivery brings it to life with code and craft. So simple, but in practice, they often feel like distant planets with different atmospheres, different gravities, and barely a shared language between them. I've seen this up close, and in one LinkedIn content tooling project, our research team surfaced critical user needs at the exact moment the product was pushing a completely different set of features, and engineering was knee deep in performance fixes. Everyone was working hard, everyone was moving forward, but none of us were moving together. That friction wasn't loud, it wasn't hostile, but it was subtle, and it was draining, and it was constant. And like most teams, we initially misdiagnosed this as a personality clash or miscommunication. But the truth runs a lot deeper than that. And today I want to walk you through the 5 top reasons why product research and delivery teams clash without even realizing it. More importantly, I'm going to show you how to fix that in a way that strengthens the entire organization rather than just try and paper over the cracks. Reason number 1, they set sail without the same wind, direction, and alignment. The first reason teams drift into conflict is they don't actually share a single direction, even though they think they do. In the 5 rings framework from my book, 5 Rings of Delivery, this is the win ring, the clarity of direction that gives every team the same vector. Without a strong win, you get quiet but destructive chaos. Product pushes one set of priorities, research pushes another. Delivery listens to both but must deliver something coherent. I remember weeks where a product backlog turned into a tug of war. Research wanted new analytics based on their latest research. Product was pushing scheduling features, and engineering was begging for critical performance work. We tried to do pieces of everything, which meant really we advanced none of it. Our win ring was not guiding us, it was barely a breeze. McKinsey's research reinforces this. Teams with a persistent membership and single focus build consistent velocity and throughput, while teams switching goals lose both alignment and momentum. And we were living proof of that. Direction doesn't fail loudly, it fades quietly. It roads into conflicting roadmaps, unprioritized feedback, and that feeling that every sprint is a bit of a negotiation rather than a real plan. And by the time that misalignment becomes visible, the damage is already done. These teams operate without a single vision of success. This second reason is even more subtle. They don't share the same why. Research optimizes for user outcome and satisfaction. Product focuses on adoption, engagement, or commercial success, and delivery cares about performance, stability, and shipping something that works. None of these are wrong, but without a shared North Star, each team becomes the hero of their own story. I felt this most acutely in our meeting where one UX researcher described us as battling for power simply because we couldn't agree on who held decision rights for a feature that impacted user flow. It wasn't power we were fighting for, it was purpose. Our void ring, which holds shared meaning, was empty. But when we chose our North Star, which in our case was enable users to publish 30% faster, the energy changed. Every discussion anchored back to that same goal. Research knew where to focus, product knew which features advanced the objective, delivery knew what to optimize for, and suddenly the friction that once felt structural dissolved into collaboration. Leading Agile research echoes this. Top teams report improved collaboration and business alignment as a top benefit of Agile, provided they have a unified process. When the void ring is filled, clarity replaces friction. Number 3, the signals don't reach another. Even when the direction and purpose are aligned, the third failure point can completely derail the project. And this third failure point is the flow of information between teams. This is the watering, the pathways through which signals travel. When water is blocked, teams rediscover the same problems over and over again. Research findings just fall through the cracks and vital context evaporates before anyone can act on it. I saw this repeatedly in a LinkedIn tooling project. We'd run user tests, uncover critical UX flaws, sometimes problems so glaring that they seem impossible to miss, and then lose insight entirely between email threads and Slack channels. By the time engineering reviewed it, the context had vanished or was already built around the issue. It's like trying to talk through radio static. The message went out, but no one was quite sure if anyone heard them or what it meant. These dead handoffs create the illusion of communication without the reality of understanding. Because they don't show up on a board or a dashboard, the team often assumes the flow is fine until they realize they're actually solving the wrong problem or they ship the wrong item. All right, issue number 4, they act like separate teams instead of a single system. This is the fourth reason, and the clash is structural rather than emotional. Product research and delivery often behave as separate entities with their own cycles, with their own artifacts, and their own rituals. Research hands off their work, product hands off their requirements, delivery hands back increments. But the handoff model itself is the problem. It fragments ownership, it creates delays, and it turns collaboration into a series of transactions. In the example I gave, this surfaced as simple but painful confusion over who owned what, who decides the feature scope, who approves UX specifications, who judges whether user needs are met. This ambiguity breeds tension because people rush to fill the void. Now, the Nielsen-Norman group warns us that unclear ownership often feels like a battle for power, and that's exactly what it is, a structural ambiguity masquerading as interpersonal tension. When we finally embedded researchers into the product squad and gave them an equal voice in planning, everything changed. Research wasn't a visitor, they were a co-pilot. Developers could ask about user needs before needing to write code, and product could refine scope with the real evidence at hand. It stopped being 3 teams negotiating and it became 1 team collaborating. And number 5, the final and perhaps most consequential reason that teams clash is that they don't maintain a shared living feedback loop. And without this, teams learn in isolation. They react too slowly and they just repeat the same mistakes because there's no space where decisions, insights, and outcomes converge. In the project I gave an example of earlier, this improved only when we created a shared workspace. A lightweight wiki was all that we required to summarize user insights, feature decisions, open questions, and sprint actions. It wasn't fancy, it wasn't automated, but it kept the team anchored in the same reality. Monthly cross-team demos reinforced the loop. Joint retrospectives asked questions across the rings. Were we aligned? Did our communication flow? Did we stay true to our purpose? Were our roles clear? And when the answer was no, we fixed it immediately rather than letting that misalignment calcify. Now, the McKinsey report found that when planning shifts to a product level and teams have a shared ownership over outcomes, they meet their commitments more reliably and adapt much faster. That's exactly what we experienced because with the rings reinforced, friction faded and delivery began to accelerate naturally, not because we were actually working harder, but because we were working together. So what we learned was that these clashes were never about personality or capability or even process. They were about wind, void, and water, direction, purpose, and flow, breaking down quietly in the background. Once we strengthened those rings, everything else snapped into place. Conflict softened into conversations, misalignments gave way to momentum, and the team began moving as a single system rather than 3 disconnected orbits. So Agile is not failing in most organizations, as LinkedIn would have you believe, but alignment is. And when you fix that, you're not just removing the friction, you're producing pure Agile fuel for your project. If this resonated, hit like, hit subscribe, and definitely share your experience in the comments. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. As always, stay agile.